Jordan Ellis sat in her first-class seat, watching the flight attendant serve a perfectly plated filet mignon to the passenger beside her. When the cart reached her row, she received a cold turkey wrap instead. "I'm sorry, catering is prioritized for executives," the attendant explained with barely concealed disdain. Jordan didn't argue. She never did. But when the head chef emerged from the galley minutes later and spotted her across the cabin, his face went white. "Ms. Ellis? You're the one who funded my culinary school." The entire cabin fell silent as he personally prepared her meal. But this moment would reveal far more than anyone expected about second chances, hidden connections, and the power of quiet dignity. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The Boeing 777 hums steadily at 35,000 feet, carrying its passengers through the cloudless afternoon sky above the Atlantic. In Seat 3A, Jordan Ellis adjusted her reading glasses and returned to the quarterly financial reports spread across her tray table. The numbers told a familiar story of growth, expansion, and carefully calculated risks that had transformed a small tech startup into a billion-dollar empire. Her encryption protocols had revolutionized data security for financial institutions worldwide, protecting trillions of dollars in digital transactions and earning her recognition as one of the most innovative CEOs in the tech industry. Forbes had just named her company one of the fastest growing in America, and next week's cover of Time magazine would feature her breakthrough work in quantum cybersecurity. She was traveling to London to receive the prestigious Turing Innovation Award from the International Technology Council, an honor that would place her among the most celebrated technologists of her generation. Yet despite her remarkable achievements and the global recognition they had brought, Jordan felt the familiar weight of isolation that seemed to follow her everywhere, even into the rarefied air of first-class cabins where success was supposed to guarantee respect and dignity. She had learned long ago not to expect the same treatment as her fellow travelers in the premium section. But the pattern never stopped stinging with its predictable cruelty. The skeptical glances from gate agents who questioned her boarding pass, the surprised expressions when she produced her platinum status card that granted her access to exclusive lounges, the way conversations seemed to pause when she passed by in airport terminals. All of it had become background noise in her professional life. Despite being featured on magazine covers as a visionary leader, consulted by world leaders on cybersecurity policy that protected nations from digital warfare, and invited to speak at Davos about the future of technology, here at 30,000 feet among business executives, celebrities, and hereditary wealth, she remained invisible. A ghost in expensive clothing occupying space she somehow didn't deserve in their eyes. Her Harvard MBA hung on her office wall alongside patents that had changed how the world thought about digital security. Yet none of that seemed to matter when she was reduced to the color of her skin and the assumptions people made about who belonged in premium spaces. The flight attendant, a woman in her early 30s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a practiced smile that had been refined through years of customer service training, began her rounds with the beverage cart. Jordan watched with fascination as she transformed into different versions of herself depending on her audience. With the businessman in 2B, she became animated and Dane, flirtatious, chatting about wine selections and laughing at his mediocre jokes with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for those who looked the part of first-class passengers. Her knowledge of vintages suddenly became encyclopedic, her recommendations sophisticated and personalized. The woman in 1A, elderly and wearing understated but expensive jewelry, received detailed explanations about each appetizer option, complete with TAF, ingredient lists, preparation methods, and even stories about the chef who had designed the menu. The attendant's voice took on a reverent quality as she described the provenance of ingredients, the careful attention to dietary restrictions, and the airline's commitment to culinary excellence. An elderly gentleman across the aisle was treated to stories about the wine's vineyard origins, the specific growing conditions that year, and recommendations for food pairings that would enhance his dining experience. Even the somewhat disheveled passenger in row 4, who appeared to be traveling on business and looked exhausted from what was probably a challenging work schedule, received warm attention and genuine concern for his comfort during the long flight. of first-class passengers. The woman in 1A received detailed explanations about each appetizer option, complete with quote, ingredient lists and preparation methods, while an elderly gentleman across the aisle was treated to stories about the wine's vineyard origins. When the cart finally reached Jordan's row, the transformation was immediate and unmistakable. The attendant's demeanor shifted like a door closing, the warm smile becoming more professional, more distant, more perfunctory. Her posture changed subtly, becoming more rigid, more guarded, as if she were protecting herself from an unpleasant obligation. "What can I get you to drink?" she asked, her tone efficient rather than welcoming, as if she were rushing through a necessary but unwelcome task, rather than providing the premium service that Jordan's first-class ticket had purchased. The enthusiasm that had characterized her interactions with other passengers evaporated entirely, replaced by a cool professionalism that felt more like a barrier than hospitality. Jordan had experienced this shift so many times that she could predict it with scientific accuracy. She had studied it, analyzed it, understood its patterns and variations across different airlines, different routes, different crew members. Yet knowing what was coming never made it easier to endure, never softened the sharp edge of discrimination that cut through her confidence and reminded her of her place in other people's hierarchies. "I'll have a glass of the Bordeaux, please," Jordan replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had served her well in countless boardroom negotiations with Fortune 500 companies and government officials. The attendant, whose name tag read, Rebecca, an elegant script that matched the airline's premium branding, hesitated for just a moment too long, her eyes flickering over Jordan's appearance with undisguised assessment. She took in the simple black business suit that had been tailored specifically for Jordan by one of London's most exclusive designers, the understated but expensive jewelry that included a watch worth more than most people's annual salaries, and the confident bearing that came from years of commanding boardrooms filled with powerful executives. Yet despite these obvious markers of success and sophistication, Rebecca's expression remained skeptical, as if she were trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite fit her expectations of who belonged in first class. Her gaze lingered on Jordan's face, then swept the surrounding seats as if seeking confirmation or support for whatever conclusion she was reaching. "Are you sure about the wine?" she asked, her voice carrying a subtle note of condescension disguised as helpful guidance. "We also have some nice juice options available, or perhaps a soft drink that might be more suitable for your taste preferences." The suggestion hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that both women understood perfectly. Jordan felt her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly as she recognized the familiar pattern of assumptions disguised as customer service. She had heard variations of this script in restaurants, hotels, exclusive shops, and countless other spaces where her presence seemed to require explanation or justification. The attendant wasn't offering alternatives out of genuine concern for Jordan's preferences. She was attempting to redirect her toward options that seemed more appropriate for someone who, in her estimation, didn't really belong among the wine-sipping elite of first class. Jordan's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her pen, a small physical manifestation of the emotional control she had perfected over decades of navigating these interactions. She recognized the familiar script of condescension disguised as helpfulness, the patronizing tone wrapped in false concern that she had encountered in countless professional and social situations. She had been flying first class for over a decade, accumulating enough miles to circle the globe multiple times, and had probably spent more on airline tickets in the past year than Rebecca made in annual salary. Her platinum status with this particular airline granted her access to exclusive lounges, priority boarding, and complimentary upgrades that were reserved for the most valued customers. Yet here they were, playing out the same tired performance that reduced her to a set of assumptions based solely on her appearance. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. In less than 24 hours, she would be standing on a stage in London, accepting an award that recognized her as one of the most innovative minds in modern technology. The encryption algorithms she had developed were protecting the financial records of millions of people. The cybersecurity protocols her company had created were defending government databases from international threats, and the patents she held were generating revenue streams that supported thousands of her jobs worldwide. Yet here, suspended in a metal tube above the Atlantic Ocean. She was just another black woman who apparently needed guidance about appropriate beverage choices. "The Bordeaux will be fine, thank you," Jordan replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had served her well in countless boardroom negotiations with Fortune 500 companies, congressional hearings about national cybersecurity infrastructure, and international conferences where she represented the cutting edge of technological innovation. Her tone was measured, professional, and gave no indication of the frustration building beneath her composed exterior. The wine arrived several minutes later, and Jordan immediately noticed the difference. While other passengers sipped their selections from crystal glasses that caught and refracted the cabin's warm lighting, creating small prisms of elegance, Jordan's Bordeaux came in a plastic cup that looked more appropriate for an economy-class beverage service. The contrast was so obvious that she wondered if Rebecca had made the choice deliberately, adding insult to injury with calculated precision. Jordan accepted the drink without comment, though she was acutely aware that the businessman across the aisle had noticed the disparity, his eyebrows raising slightly before he returned to his phone call about merger prospects and stock options, his attention already moving past what he had witnessed. The lunch service began with the same ritualistic precision that governed all first-class experiences, a carefully choreographed dance of elegance and privilege. Jordan watched Rebecca present each meal with flourishes worthy of a fine dining establishment, describing the grass-fed beef and red wine reduction in elaborate detail while serving on actual china with heavy silverware that caught the cabin's soft lighting. The businessman received his filet mignon with theatrical fanfare. The elderly gentleman was presented with detailed explanations of preparation methods, and even the somewhat disheveled passenger in row 4 was treated to the full ceremonial presentation. When Rebecca reached Jordan's seat, she produced a wrapped sandwich from a different cart entirely, placing it on the tray table without ceremony or explanation. The contrast was so stark that other passengers began to notice, conversations pausing as people processed what they were witnessing. Jordan stared at the cellophane-wrapped turkey and Swiss sandwich, noting how it contrasted sharply with the elegant presentation surrounding her like a deliberate insult wrapped in corporate policy. "Excuse me, but I believe I ordered the beef entree when I made my reservation several weeks ago." Rebecca's expression hardened slightly, though she maintained her professional facade with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to deflecting complaints. "I'm sorry, but the catering is prioritized for our executive passengers. We have limited quantities of the premium meals, and they're reserved for our most valued customers." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that both women understood perfectly, their meaning clear to everyone within earshot. Jordan felt the familiar heat rise in her chest, the anger that came from being diminished and dismissed based on nothing more than the color of her skin and the assumptions people made about her worthiness. She glanced around the cabin, noting that every other passenger, regardless of age, apparent status, or even basic grooming, had received the full meal service with all its accompanying theater. "I see," Jordan said quietly, her voice betraying none of the frustration coursing through her veins like electricity. She had learned long ago that arguing in these situations only made things worse, only confirmed the stereotypes that people were already eager to believe about angry black women who didn't know their place. Instead, she unwrapped her sandwich with the same dignity she brought to every challenge in her life, from hostile takeovers to congressional testimony about national cybersecurity infrastructure. The businessman across the aisle had definitely noticed the exchange this time, his eyebrows raising slightly as he took in the disparity between meals, the obvious discrimination playing out in real time. He seemed to consider saying something, his mouth opening slightly before he apparently thought better of it and returned to cutting his perfectly prepared steak, choosing the path of least resistance that privilege often afforded those who could afford to look away. Jordan took a bite of her sandwich, tasting nothing but the bitterness of familiar discrimination seasoned with stale bread and processed turkey. The contrast with the aromatic dishes being enjoyed around her was so pronounced that she wondered if Rebecca had chosen the most unappetizing option deliberately, adding insult to injury with calculated precision. As she ate her meager lunch in silence, Jordan's mind wandered to the board meeting that would follow her London award ceremony, where she would present quarterly results that had exceeded all projections by substantial margins. Ellis Technologies had revolutionized data security for major financial institutions, earned her recognition as one of Time magazine's most influential people, and generated billions in revenue, while employing thousands of people worldwide. Yet here, suspended between continents in a metal tube, she was just another black woman who had somehow stumbled into the wrong section of the aircraft. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was flying to receive international recognition for her contributions to technological advancement, while being treated as if she were an unwelcome intruder in a space she had every right to occupy. She thought about her younger self, the girl from Detroit who had dreamed of changing the world through code and innovation, and wondered what that idealistic teenager would think of this moment of casual humiliation dressed up as corporate policy. As Jordan finished her disappointing lunch, she noticed increased activity in the galley area. The sounds of professional kitchen work, muffled by distance and cabin noise, suggested that someone was preparing additional meals, or perhaps working on special requests for passengers with dietary restrictions. She assumed it was just the normal rhythm of airline service, the behind-the-scenes choreography that kept first-class passengers satisfied and comfortable in their bubble of purchased privilege. What she didn't expect was to see a tall, dark-skinned man in chef's whites emerge from the galley area, carrying a clipboard and surveying the cabin with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to ensuring perfection in high-pressure environments. His movements were confident and purposeful, suggesting authority rather than subservience, the bearing of someone who had earned his position through skill and dedication rather than circumstance. Jordan watched with mild curiosity as he spoke quietly with Rebecca, gesturing toward different sections of the cabin while reviewing what appeared to be passenger manifest information with the thoroughness of a professional who took pride in his work. The chef's gaze swept across the first-class section methodically, taking inventory of satisfied customers and empty plates with the attention to detail that separated excellent service from mere competence. When his eyes reached Jordan's row, they stopped abruptly, widening with what appeared to be recognition, followed by disbelief and growing excitement that transformed his entire expression. "Ms. Ellis," he said, his voice carrying across the cabin despite his attempt to keep it low, cutting through conversations about stock portfolios and vacation plans. "Jordan Ellis?" Every conversation in first class ceased simultaneously, as if someone had pressed a pause button on the entire social ecosystem. Heads turned to focus on the unexpected interaction between the chef and the woman who had been relegated to a sandwich lunch. Passengers suddenly finding themselves witnesses to something they didn't understand, but instinctively recognized as significant. Jordan felt the weight of attention, the sudden shift in the cabin's energy as people tried to understand what they were witnessing, their curiosity palpable in the suddenly charged atmosphere. "Yes," she replied simply, unsure of where this encounter might lead, but grateful for any distraction from the humiliation of the past hour. The chef's face broke into a smile so genuine and radiant that it seemed to illuminate the entire cabin, transforming his professional demeanor into something deeply personal and emotional. He approached her row with quick, determined steps, his clipboard forgotten as the significance of their meeting overwhelmed all other considerations. "My God, it really is you," he said, his voice thick with emotion that he made no attempt to hide. "Ms. Ellis, I'm Marcus Rodriguez. You probably don't remember me, but 15 years ago, you funded my scholarship to the Culinary Institute of America. I was working 3 jobs just to survive, washing dishes and prepping vegetables for minimum wage, and your foundation gave me the chance to pursue my dream of becoming a chef." The silence in the cabin became absolute, the kind of quiet that occurs when people realize they are witnessing something significant, something that will shift their understanding of the world around them and their own place within it. Jordan studied Marcus's face, searching her memory for the young man he had once been among the hundreds of scholarship applications she had personally reviewed in the early days of her foundation. "Marcus," she said softly, recognition dawning in her voice like sunrise breaking through clouds. "You wrote me that beautiful letter about wanting to combine molecular gastronomy with traditional Latin flavors. I remember now, you were working in a restaurant kitchen in Queens, dreaming of opening your own place someday." Marcus nodded eagerly, tears beginning to form in his eyes as the moment took on deeper significance than either of them had expected. "That's right, that's exactly right. Ms. Ellis, you changed my entire life with that scholarship. I graduated top of my class, worked in Michelin-starred restaurants across Europe, and now I'm the executive chef for this entire airline. Everything I have, everything I've accomplished, every opportunity that followed, it all started with your belief in me when nobody else would take that chance. The transformation in the cabin's atmosphere was palpable, like watching storm clouds part to reveal clear sky. Passengers who had been ignoring Jordan moments earlier now stared at her with new interest and growing awareness, their assumptions crumbling in real time as they reassessed everything they thought they knew about the woman sitting gala. Among them, Rebecca stood near the galley entrance, her face pale as she began to understand the magnitude of her earlier behavior, the weight of her discrimination becoming clear as she watched this reunion unfold before the entire first-class section. "I'm so happy to see how well you've done," Jordan said, her voice warm with genuine pride and maternal satisfaction. "Your success is your own achievement, Marcus. I just provided a small opportunity at the right moment." "A small opportunity?" Marcus laughed, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand in a gesture that made him seem younger, more vulnerable. "Ms. Ellis, you gave a kid from nowhere the chance to dream bigger than he ever thought possible. You saw potential that nobody else recognized, invested in a future that seemed impossible from where I was standing, and here you are, eating, Beck." He paused, noticing her sandwich wrapper for the first time, his expression shifting from joy to confusion, then to something approaching anger as he took in the contrast between her meal and the elegant presentations surrounding her. "Who served you that sandwich?" he asked, his voice taking on a dangerous edge that suggested years of professional authority and zero tolerance for substandard service in his domain. The cabin's energy shifted again, tension replacing wonder as passengers began to understand that they were about to witness something uncomfortable but necessary, a reckoning that had been building since the meal service began. Rebecca took an involuntary step backward, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine fear as she realized her actions were about to be scrutinized by someone with real authority. Jordan placed a gentle hand on Marcus's arm, recognizing the fury building in his expression and hoping to defuse the situation before it escalated beyond repair. "It's not important, Marcus. I'm just happy to see you doing so well, achieving everything you dreamed about." "No, Ms. Ellis, this is absolutely important," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to running high-pressure kitchen operations where excellence was not negotiable. "You're in first class, you paid for first-class service, and someone decided you didn't deserve the same treatment as everyone else on this aircraft. That's completely unacceptable, and it ends right now." He turned to survey the other passengers, noting their finished plates and crystal glasses, the remnants of meals served with ceremony and respect, then looked back at Jordan's meager meal remnants. The contrast told a story that needed no explanation, a story that every person in that cabin now understood with crystal clarity and growing discomfort. "Rebecca," Marcus called, his voice cutting through the silence like a chef's knife through tender meat. "Could you please explain to me why Ms. Ellis, who is clearly a first-class passenger with every right to premium service, received a sandwich while everyone else enjoyed the beef entrée?" Rebecca's face cycled through several shades of red as she struggled to formulate a response that might salvage her position and career prospects. Well, we had limited quantities, and the catering guidelines suggest that we should prioritize our most valued passengers." The catering guidelines suggest what, exactly?" Marcus interrupted, his tone professional but unforgiving, the voice of someone who had built his career on treating every customer with dignity, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. "That we should discriminate against passengers based on our personal assumptions about who belongs in first class? That we should ignore basic human decency in favor of our own prejudices? And..." The businessman across the aisle cleared his throat uncomfortably, finally finding his voice after remaining silent during the discriminatory treatment he had witnessed. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but notice the disparity in service as well. It seemed, completely inappropriate and frankly embarrassing to witness." His comment opened a floodgate of whispered conversations throughout the cabin as passengers began to acknowledge what they had witnessed, and in some cases, their own complicity in ignoring obvious injustice playing out before Bra. Their eyes. The woman in 1A shifted in her seat, avoiding eye contact with anyone, as she seemed to grapple with her own discomfort and growing shame. Jordan felt the familiar weight of being the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. But this time the energy was different, transformative rather than diminishing. Instead of being scrutinized as an unwelcome intruder, she found herself at the center of a moment of reckoning that seemed to extend far beyond airline meal service into questions of basic human dignity and respect. "Marcus," she said gently, recognizing his protective instincts, but hoping to channel them constructively. "You don't need to make this into a bigger issue than it already is." "With respect, Ms. Ellis, this is exactly the kind of issue that needs to be addressed publicly and decisively," Marcus replied, his voice carrying 15 years of gratitude and determination. "You spent your career breaking down barriers and creating opportunities for people like me. You've changed lives, built companies, transformed entire industries. The least I can do is ensure you receive the basic dignity and respect you deserve on my aircraft, the same respect you've shown to countless others throughout your career." He disappeared back into the galley, and Jordan could hear the sounds of intensive food preparation, the rapid chopping and sizzling that suggested a master chef at work, someone who had learned to channel passion and precision into culinary art. The cabin remained unusually quiet, passengers seemingly afraid to resume their conversations in the wake of what they had witnessed, the comfortable bubble of privilege temporarily punctured by reality. Rebecca approached Jordan's seat hesitantly, her earlier confidence completely evaporated like morning mist. "Ms. Ellis, I want to apologize for the confusion earlier. I should have provided better service. I should have treated you with the same respect as every other passenger. You should have treated me like every other human being," Jordan replied simply, her voice carrying the weight of countless similar encounters. "That's all any of us really want, to be judged by our character and actions, rather than by assumptions based on our appearance." 20 minutes later, Marcus emerged from the galley carrying a tray that looked like something from a world-class restaurant, a presentation that surpassed even the meals that had been served to the other first-class passengers. A perfectly seared beef tenderloin sat atop roasted vegetables, arranged with artistic precision, accompanied by a rich red wine reduction that had been carefully plated to create an almost painterly effect that spoke to years of training and natural talent. "Ms. Ellis," he said, presenting the meal with the kind of ceremony typically reserved for heads of state or celebrity guests, "I present your lunch, prepared with the respect and gratitude that you've always shown others, with the recognition that you deserve nothing less than excellence." The entire cabin watched in silence as Jordan accepted the meal, her eyes bright with emotion at this unexpected turn of events and the care that had gone into its preparation. The aroma alone was extraordinary, suggesting layers of flavor and technique that went far beyond typical airline cuisine, elevated to restaurant quality through skill and dedication. "Marcus, this is beautiful, but you didn't need to go to such lengths," she said, though her appreciation was evident in every word. "Yes, I did," he replied firmly, his voice carrying the conviction of someone who understood the deeper significance of the moment. "Not just because of what you did for me personally, though that would be reason enough, but because every person on this aircraft just learned something important about making assumptions, about treating people with dignity regardless of whether we think they fit our expectations of success or worthiness." End quote. He gestured to the other passengers, many of whom had the grace to look embarrassed about their earlier indifference to obvious discrimination happening in their presence. "Everyone here witnessed something that happens far too often in our society, and everyone here now understands that success and worthiness don't always look the way we expect them to. That our assumptions can blind us to remarkable people sitting right beside us." Jordan took a bite of the expertly prepared meal, the flavors complex and perfectly balanced in a way that spoke to years of training, natural talent, and the kind of passion that transforms cooking into art. "This is incredible, Marcus. You've clearly mastered your craft and then some." "I had an excellent teacher," he replied with a smile that encompassed 15 years of gratitude. "Not in cooking techniques, but in believing that dreams are achievable when someone gives you the chance to pursue them. That potential exists in unexpected places and deserves to be nurtured regardless of circumstances." As Jordan continued her meal, Marcus lingered nearby, clearly wanting to prolong their reunion and share more of his journey. "Ms. Ellis," I hope you don't mind me asking, but what brings you to London? Business or pleasure? I'm receiving an innovation award from the International Technology Council, she replied between bites of the exceptional meal. Ellis Technologies has developed some breakthrough encryption protocols that are changing how financial institutions and governments protect sensitive data from cyber threats. The businessman across the aisle, James Davidson, who had been listening intently, nearly choked on his wine as the full scope of Jordan's identity became clear. Wait, you're Jordan Ellis of Ellis Technologies? I've been following your company's work for years. Your quantum encryption model is revolutionary, absolutely revolutionary. We've been trying to get a meeting with you for months. You know Ms. Ellis's work? Marcus asked, clearly pleased to see others recognizing Jordan's achievements and contributions to technology and security. Know it? My entire firm has been trying to schedule a consultation with her. We represent some of the largest investment groups in Europe, and everyone wants to discuss partnership opportunities with Ellis Technologies. Your cybersecurity innovations are reshaping the entire industry, end quote. Jordan smiled politely at the businessman's sudden enthusiasm, noting how quickly his attitude had shifted once her professional credentials became clear. His newfound respect based on recognition rather than basic human decency. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Davidson. I cannot apologize enough for not recognizing you earlier, and more importantly, for not speaking up when I witnessed that discriminatory treatment, Davidson said, his embarrassment genuine. When I saw the meal service disparity, I should have said something immediately, instead of looking the other way. The fact that you recognized it was wrong is what matters now, Jordan replied diplomatically, her grace under pressure evident even in this moment of vindication. Too often, people choose not to see these situations, even when they're happening right in front of them, even when their intervention could make a difference. The woman in 1A, who had remained silent throughout the entire encounter, finally cleared her throat, her discomfort with her own behavior, finally overcoming her reluctance to get involved. I'm ashamed to admit that I noticed the different treatment as well, but I told myself it wasn't my business, that someone else would handle it. I realize now that staying silent makes me complicit in perpetuate these injustices. Her comments sparked conversations throughout the first-class cabin, passengers sharing their own experiences with discrimination, creating an unexpected dialogue about privilege, assumption, and responsibility that none of them had anticipated when they boarded the flight. Marcus watched this conversation unfold with visible satisfaction, recognizing that Jordan's dignity and his intervention had created something larger than either of them had intended. Ms. Ellis, this is exactly what I mean about your impact. Even in a difficult situation, you've managed to create a teachable moment that will stay with everyone here long after this flight ends. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most uncomfortable moments, Jordan replied thoughtfully. The question is whether people choose to learn from them and change their behavior, or simply forget them once the immediate discomfort passes. As the meal service concluded and passengers began settling in for the remainder of the flight, Marcus returned to his galley duties, but not before presenting Jordan with a small business card printed on elegant paper. Ms. Ellis, I run a restaurant in Covent Garden when I'm not working airline routes. If you have time during your stay in London, it would be the honor of my career to prepare a proper meal for you and show you how far that scholarship money traveled. Jordan accepted the card, noting the elegant design and the restaurant's impressive credentials. Luna Roja. I've heard wonderful things about this place from my London colleagues. They've mentioned it as one of the city's most innovative dining experiences. It's my attempt to combine everything you helped me learn about flavors, techniques, and presentation, Marcus explained, his pride evident, but tempered with humility. Traditional Latin cuisine elevated through modern culinary science, exactly what I wrote about in that letter 15 years ago when I was just a dreamer working in someone else's kitchen. I'll definitely make time to visit, Jordan promised, genuinely touched by the invitation and the full-circle nature of their encounter. I'd love to see how you've translated those early dreams into culinary reality. As the aircraft began its descent into Heathrow Airport, Jordan reflected on the unexpected trajectory of her day. What had begun as another routine business flight marked by casual discrimination had transformed into a celebration of human potential, and the ripple effects that occur when someone invests in another person's dreams. The scholarship program that had supported Marcus had grown far beyond her initial vision. Now, supporting hundreds of students annually and partnering with institutions around the world to identify and nurture talent, regardless of background or circumstances. Marcus's success represented everything she had hoped to achieve through these efforts, the transformation of individual opportunity into broader impact that rippled outward to benefit entire communities. As they prepared for landing, Marcus appeared one final time, carrying a small wrapped package that he presented to Jordan with obvious care and attention. "Ms. Ellis," he said, his voice warm with gratitude. "This is a cookbook I compiled, featuring recipes from scholarship recipients around the world. All of us connected by the opportunities your foundation provided. All of us paying forward what we received." Jordan accepted the package, her eyes bright with tears, as she realized the scope of what Marcus and others had created beyond their individual success. "Marcus, this is extraordinary. I had no idea you had maintained these connections." "We meet annually now," he explained proudly. "Chefs from around the world, all connected by your belief in our potential. We share techniques, collaborate on special events, and most importantly, we identify young cooks who need the same kind of support we received." The airplane had emptied around them as they talked, other passengers eager to begin their London activities, but many pausing to nod respectfully to Jordan as they passed. Their earlier indifference replaced by recognition and understanding of the remarkable woman who had been sitting among them. As they parted ways in the terminal, Jordan reflected on the interconnected nature of opportunity and the way individual success could become collective progress when approached with intention and generosity. Her encounter with Marcus had Boskak reminded her why she had chosen to use her success as a platform for creating opportunities for others. The taxi ride into central London provided time to process the full impact of her encounter with Marcus. From the initial discrimination to the moment of recognition to the broader conversation about dignity and assumption that had emerged from their reunion. She thought about Pons, Rebecca's commitment to examining her own biases, and the way the entire cabin had been forced to confront their assumptions about worth and belonging. Most significantly, she reflected on Marcus himself, the young man whose passionate letter about culinary dreams had caught her attention 15 years earlier. Now grown into a successful chef who understood that achievement carried the responsibility to lift others. His response to witnessing her mistreatment had been swift and decisive, creating a moment of education and accountability that resonated far beyond their personal connection. The following evening at Luna Roja exceeded every expectation Jordan had formed about Marcus's culinary abilities. The restaurant occupied a converted Victorian building in Covent Garden, its interior design elegantly combining traditional Latin American elements with contemporary sophistication. The meal he prepared told the story of his journey from scholarship recipient to acclaimed chef, each course representing different phases of his development and the influences that had shaped his unique culinary voice. During dinner, Marcus introduced Jordan to several young cooks working in his kitchen, scholarship recipients and program graduates who were now gaining experience under his mentorship. The circle of opportunity had expanded organically, creating a network of support that extended far beyond her original investment in one promising young man's education. "Ms. Ellis," Marcus said as the evening concluded, "you've shown me that real success isn't measured just by personal achievement, but by how many others you help along the way. That lesson has shaped everything about how I run this restaurant, how I train young chefs, and how I approach my responsibility as someone who is given a chance." Jordan left London with her Innovation Award and, more importantly, with a renewed understanding of the lasting impact that comes from believing in others' potential. The encounter with Marcus had transformed what could have been another painful reminder of discrimination into a celebration of human possibility and the multiplication of opportunity that occurs when people choose to be asked. Invest in each other's dreams. The story of her flight became part of her standard presentation at foundation events, illustrating the ripple effects that occur when people are given chances to pursue their dreams and the importance of maintaining dignity in the face of discrimination. She spoke about unexpected connections, the power of recognition, and the responsibility that comes with success to create opportunities for the next generation. Years later, The network Marcus and helped create continued to grow, connected by shared values and a commitment to ensuring that the next generation of dreamers would find fewer barriers and more opportunities to achieve their goals. The discrimination Jordan had faced, while painful and unacceptable, had created the circumstances for a reunion that reaffirmed her life's work and demonstrated the lasting impact of investing in human potential. The meal that Marcus had prepared with such care and attention had nourished more than just Jordan's body. It had fed her spirit and renewed her commitment to the work that gave her life its deepest meaning and purpose. Sometimes, she reflected, the most meaningful destinations are the ones we never planned to reach, found instead through the kindness of strangers and the unexpected recognition of shared humanity in the most unlikely circumstances.